timer. There. I am resident of Collinwood for YouTube. Joel Sains. I am joined by my buddy John Phillp Bettencourt. We're here to talk his ongoing blog series, To Benight and Beguile. You dropped some bombshells at the end of this.
It was quite it was like a minefield.
Yeah. I'll tell you something I was most shocked by, and I got to ask you a bunch of questions. Before I get my shock therapy here, what Jacqueline Gray and the Coven of Witches? First of all, what was the inspiration behind Jacqueline Gray?
So, well, in the beginning, I needed somebody to come back. I needed sort of like a tool to help Sebastian and Mary and Philippe come and take care of Caspian. You know, the devil was sort of around Welshport, and there needed to be some kind of like mechanism to thwart his evil. And so I thought of like different stories that I've read, inspirations of like usually when a coven of witches come together, they form a bigger power than the evil that they're fighting. So and of course, Eliza had already died, and Mary was by herself, and Charlotte is sort of supernatural herself, but she's a little too young. She's not really fully engrossed in that world just yet. She's getting there, but I mean, in this book, she's inching closer, but at the time she was really young, so I didn't want to put her in there. So I came up with the story of Mary finds that her mom's coven is sort of vanquished. You know, I've also explored that in previous books where her coven's sort of gone. She's the last witch, but Mary finds a clue to the past coven of the Sisters of Highgrove. That was the coven's name, and she discovers that Jacqueline is part of this coven through ancestors of hers. And Mary sends Sebastian off to find Jacqueline, and that's sort of where it all kind of snowballs into this makeshift new coven of the new Sisters of Highgrove that consists of Mary and Jacqueline and the secret other witch that they kind of weren't able to discover just yet. So there is one more person. There's always three, so they were able to kind of connect us two, but there's another person out there somewhere that they just haven't discovered yet.
That leads me to my next question. I don't mean to spoil anything. So, are we going to get a complete backstory of the Sisters of Highgrove?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, I'm not sure how far ahead it'll happen because book 6 is outlined and it's going to focus more on the wolf and that kind of stuff. But yes, there's definitely going to be more of the witches when a lot of the other things are cleared out. Yeah.
Okay.
And I know who. Look, I'm gonna do a little spoiler. I do know who the third witch is. There is somebody, but that's to come.
Right. We don't want to spoil too much, right?
Yeah.
Right. like that's how I'm thinking. Man, I don't want to when I'm looking at my question. No, I don't want to ask that because that might spoil something. So,
anything you want, I'll answer as quickly as I can, as pervasively as I can.
Right. So we meet this guy named Winter who is on an island of Azores. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that.
That's perfect.
Oh, thank you. Like when I'm reading some of the stuff that's in Portuguese and stuff, I'm I do not want to butcher that word.
Oh my God, and I'm so awful. I know. I feel bad, but it's I always have to put a little piece of breadcrumbs of my little heritage in there. So I know.
No,
so I forgive me for doing that to everybody.
No, not at all. It keeps me honest. But there's the guy who was helping him. His mom had him leave the island. What was the emphasis behind that?
So when Winter is finally sort of getting little bits and pieces of memory back after they find him in the water and he's in the Azores for a long time, he sort of gets these little bits and pieces, and when he realizes that he finds the map in his pocket, or when Lucas gives him the map that they found in his pocket, he knows where he's from. He can kind of deduce from that he's from this place called Maine, and there's an island called Welshport, and that's where he lived. And so they encourage him to, this is where you should be. This is where your memory is leading you to. There's this vision of a woman that he keeps seeing that he feels must be there. And so he's seeing this woman. He knows that there's this place. And Silvina, who's the mom, and Lucas decide, look, this is sort of it's kind of a destiny type of thing. It's showing you a map to where you go. And his mom is also very intuitive. She has this kind of way to see things and through, some supernatural way that she has about her, that she can kind of figure out his name, and she figures out his name in Portuguese, Inverno, which means winter. So they call him Winter. And yeah, they decide like, this is what you should do. And so Sylvina is sort of like, Lucas, you should go with him, because she also knows that it's time for him to kind of spread his wings. He has a little backstory too that he hints about, and she wants him to kind of run from that to give himself a new life. So he goes with them. He goes with Winter back to Welshport. They're on their way, at least. That's where we left it. They're on their way.
Yeah, they're coming to Welshport. If I were them, I'd tell them, yeah, there are places that go to Crystal Lake.
Yeah, I don't know.
You might have a better chance at surviving that. At this rate, no, really, that's what's interesting about your story, and I do want to compliment you. You do a great job of setting the scenes, no matter where it's at, whether it's Welshport, London, and that's another thing too. Like Sabrina, who's in Genevieve's body, and she finds a man who, for the most part, looks like David Lord in this chapter here. And I really enjoyed how you wrote the stalking scene, because I've been teasing you with, you need to write a Halloween story.
Yeah,
and I'm gonna tell you this right now. You have no more excuses, because you wrote a stalking scene so well. I'm thinking, he's teasing me with this. But
that's a huge compliment, especially. I mean, wow. Yeah.
No, it was really good. So, like, I was really shocked that she found somebody, or from what it appears, may have found David Lord. Can you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, so she is still on this mission. She's basically fully engrossed into being Genevieve, but with everything that makes up Sabrina. So Sabrina is now technically gone. She's inside of Genevieve. It's sort of touched on in the beginning, but Genevieve disappears, or not disappears, but goes to London. So we don't really get a lot of that in book 5. But she is basically herself. She is Genevieve, but she has all of Sabrina's memories. She has all of the love in her whole body for this David. That's why she's so obsessed with finding him, is because she feels the love that Sabrina has loved David the same way. So she feels that same kind of incredible, like, passionate love that Sabrina had. So she gets this kind of clue from Charlotte to go to London, and she gets there. You don't really see what happens to her until the very end, till the very last chapter of the book beginning. And she's sort of giving up. She's sort of like, I've been here all this time. I haven't found anybody. Nobody knows who this person is. And suddenly she is, like you were mentioning, she is kind of followed, and the person attacks her and takes her back to his house, and is upset that she's, looking into who he is. And when sort of the light appears in the room, she can see that he is very, very close to David Lord. That's who she thinks she found.
Yeah. It's really interesting too. It's like, I'm thinking, man, I hope you found the right dude.
Yeah. Well, after all this time, what will he, what secrets does he have? Because there's a huge gap in between the beginning of the story and what happened to David. David didn't appear at all throughout the beginning, except in a flashback.
Yeah, it's been a while since anyone has seen David. It's been a long time.
A lot of the town thinks he's dead. They just remember him jumping off the lighthouse, and that was it. But see,
yeah, it's really. Are you still there? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, sorry. I really like how with Evie, you tied in something that was from the very beginning. She had a dream sequence, or a vision, if you will, when Gaspar had Rebecca hypnotize her. She had this weird dream sequence about being buried alive, and in chapter, I think it was 15, you had her. She was buried alive, which I found really, really neat. You tying that in. That was really, really cool. And then Sebastian saves her. Something that I will mention that you did here, you don't say what did or didn't happen to Sebastian. You sort of left that open here.
That's true. And there's good reason for that, which you'll know later on once book 6 opens up. So there is
Yeah.
a big that's another one of those sort of like cliffhangers, is that I left that very open because we don't know what happened to him. But yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm so glad you caught the tie-in, because yeah, I was really excited to do it. I was wanting to do it much earlier, having her buried alive earlier, because that was always it's a sort of I guess I'll say it's a ripoff of of an old Days of Our Lives story. There was a character who was buried alive, and when I
Yeah.
was like 10 years old, that's when I first started watching that show, and it was the most craziest thing I'd ever seen on television because of the way they did it. It was just, very low production for a daytime soap. For them to do it as good as they did, I was just obsessed, and so I thought, I really want to do something very close to that, but I didn't want to copy as far as like the way it happens. And so I did, of course, the heroine has to be the one that's buried alive, but I couldn't figure out how to do it in the early stages of the story. So as
Yeah.
I kind of dropped the story, that part of it, after the dream sequence, and then as I moved forward in the story, I thought the Jacqueline thing would loop it in and have her sort of put a spell on her somehow, work those details in there, and then I figured out how to get her finally buried alive.
Yeah. I didn't think you were going to bury her alive there for a minute, because I'm thinking, no, somebody's going to touch this woman. No, nobody does.
Nobody does. Well, remember, this is the Edwardian days, so people
Yep.
are very scared of dead bodies. They're very
Yeah.
superstitious, and they don't really want to deal with people like that. I mean, they're very dark-minded in terms of death and all that kind of stuff. It's a carryover from the Victorians.
Yeah, that's something too that Evie is hoping for. She's hoping for not just someone to touch her. She's hoping for a bell in her coffin, which
Yes,
which there isn't. So
there is not. She searches and searches for that damn string, and there's no string.
like, no, girl, not for you.
They didn't have the money, I guess. The lords were cheap when they buried her.
Well, she's not really she's a lord by marriage, so
She's a lord by marriage, and not a very popular one, according to Jacob. He does not like her.
he doesn't like anybody.
Yeah, he likes himself.
Yeah.
That's about it.
Yeah, Jacob's a special case, for sure. We'll say, I will say this: your villains are really interesting too. You have Jacob, you have Jacqueline. Is there another villain that we're not aware of?
Well, those are the main face value villains. Like, you see Jacob in all the things he's done, and Jacqueline, of course. It wasn't my intention to make her a villain in the beginning. Remember, she came in as sort of Mary's best friend type of thing, and then of course I was like, no, let's make her a villain. And
Yeah.
then there are the villains that are sort of two-faced villains, where they're doing bad things, but they don't really necessarily want to do bad things, but they do them anyway. Like Gregory. Gregory is doing something terrible to the woman he loves, but he's doing it because he felt like it would help her. Of course, that's never going to work out, but he did it anyway. And then, of course, there's Celeste, who is just trying to survive in this world where she knows that at any minute her husband is going to just, he might just kill her, he might just drop her, he might do anything to her if he gets tired of her. So even she does some underhanded things to keep herself in position of safety for one. So, and her brother Jonathan's doing the same thing. Jonathan and Celeste are sort of like these two siblings who have known really what it's like to be on the outs within the Lord family circle, and now they're on the in. So they're like clamoring to stay where they are and doing really horrible things at the same time.
Yeah, she as well. She's very underhanded.
Oh, right. Yes, she is, and at the same time, she's doing it for herself, because what she did to Dr. Kim was awful, but it was because of what he did to her family. And now she's doing it to Nick to save herself. She's keeping secrets from Nick after she promised not to keep secrets from him. So there are all these different people who are good in the sense of that they don't want to do the things that they're doing, but they feel like they have to do the things that they're doing that are hurting other people to save themselves. So it's kind of like a selfish twist on their personality. They're not as honest as Jacqueline and Jacob are with their evil plots. Jacqueline and Jacob are super, they're doing what they're doing, and that they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, they don't hide it too much, we'll say.
Yeah. Jacob doesn't hide it at all. He is straight up horrible, and he is not afraid to show you that he is.
No, he's not. He's a sick cat. That's for sure. I'm like, this dude's dirty.
He is very, very dirty
I,
to his
I
own
do
family.
I do like something you potentially set up too, that with Caspian, he says that he's sure that he wasn't always the devil. So it's sort of up for interpretation. Well, was or wasn't he?
Hmm. Well,
Which is
he definitely feels that there was more to his story than where it began. For him, it began when he came out of that sort of possession. It's sort of like, wait, who was I before this? There has to be more to me. And
right.
that's sort of where he's going to go and explore in his next story, because I think he deserves some kind of backstory.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I'm thinking, well, is he or isn't he? So I like that interpretation of. Again, it's another seed you're laying for book 6 or book
Yeah,
7,
yeah.
yeah,
Hmm.
which is really cool. I like that's something I really enjoy too. You laid a lot of seeds here for your next book. You didn't reveal too much. Another thing we found out: Vivi is alive.
She is. You caught that. It was a small scene. Good, good. I'm so glad you read, Jewel. I'm so glad you read this stuff, because sometimes I write and I'm like, God, am I just doing this for myself? And I'm so glad that you catch every little thing that's in there. I'm like literally very happy. Yes.
I'm
It
a
was probably a 4 or 5 paragraph scene and you caught it. I'm so glad you did.
I'm a meticulous bastard, my friend.
I'm so happy you caught that. It was literally the smallest scene in the whole of the chapter. And I'm like, well, I'm just gonna throw it in because I need to put something here, so it's not just sort of out of the blue in book 6. But you caught it. I'm so glad.
Yeah, I'm like I said, I'm a meticulous bastard. Uh, so when I read stuff, I read it. That's the thing. That's what I do. It's really good though too, because I kept thinking, oh, holy shit. So
And it's been like 25 years.
yeah,
So who is this person? Where is she? And what is Laurel hiding? Like where did she go? Like she just disappeared. Like she didn't die. Like they
well,
thought she died.
well, what I really enjoyed too about that
That's a
exchange is
spoiler.
how cold the letter is to Laurel. Like they're not too nice to her.
Yeah.
It's almost like, bitch, please leave me alone. like, like again, without spoiling it, like, what, like, are they just like annoyed with her, or?
I think that, she is, as we were talking about, like villains who are villains on their face and villains that are kind of hiding that.
Right,
Laurel is desperately guilty of what she did, and
right,
there's a reason why she did it, and that'll come true. So, or come to fruition in book 6, why she did it and how it all happened and what exactly happened.
yeah,
So she's very guilty, and so I'm assuming. So, like I said, I haven't really put that on paper yet, but
right,
you can imagine that somebody like her, she's a good woman. She's the wife of the main doctor on the island. She doesn't want to hurt anybody. She's done something pretty terrible to a woman who thought she lost her baby. And so she's probably in a panic and constantly writing these people like, stay away, stay away, stay away.
yeah. I gotta tell you my werewolf philosophy. I've never met a werewolf that didn't deserve a silver bullet. But no offense to Phillip. Um, in this story, which is really interesting, you turned him into a werewolf.
He is the werewolf. He is the wolf of the moon wolf.
Yeah. What what was the logic behind creating a werewolf? Was it because of Sebastian?
Yes and no. So there was always an idea that he was going to be a werewolf from the beginning, and it was always. I mean, I kind of dropped hints of wolves throughout the series of, and if
Yeah.
you know, I don't know if you. Those are tiny, tiny little hints that I put in there, but usually they surround either Sebastian or Philippe hears them. So either one of the two always hear them, and it's just those two. Except now Morgan. Morgan's been kind of like looped into that too. But so Philippe was always going to be my werewolf, and he and Sebastian have a very contentious relationship already. They used to be friends, and Philippe's blood helped create Sebastian, and there's this sort of like connection between the two. And being that I wanted him to be a werewolf, I wanted to make sure that they're like kind of like enemy status stayed enemy status, and what else can I do but make one a werewolf and one a vampire? But
Yeah.
their stories won't collide just yet. There's going to be some stuff that happens in between that. We'll focus more on Philippe's sort of rise to this werewolf status, and then we'll see how that kind of plays out with his aunt. His aunt has a big piece of that too.
Well, something I caught too was that a wolf did leap in front of Jacob's car. So
Yes, and they were coming from where were they? They were down. They were in the town, I think. Yeah. They've
yeah,
dropped in since the beginning. There's always been a wolf here and there.
yeah, the Phillp like heard like he you're right. Sebastian heard wolves in his, whether it was in his sleep or awake,
And he was
and
followed by wolves too.
and yeah, and he was followed by wolves. And Phillp heard wolves out throughout Good Island because they were always hungry. Because Sebastian had to eat.
He was eating everything. The wolves were hungry.
Yeah, like the hell with them. So that was not that he said that, but that's yeah, they were pretty. That's the thing. Like the wolf that attacked Phillp was more hungry. Like he was very like skin and bone almost. So which I found really interesting. Talk to me about creating a whole different like asylum because you went away from Wincliffe, which I like. You created a whole different asylum.
So, well, there's two parts to that. One part was that the reason why I put Evie at Wincliffe in the first place was I wanted to sort of tip my hat to Dark Shadows and be
Right.
like, this is because of Dark Shadows. This story is created because I love the show so much, and so I wanted to kind of tie that in. And I always drop a little bit of pieces here and there, like where Sebastian was hidden. Jonathan put him in Annabella Collins's tomb. That's also a hint to Dark Shadows. So there's always a little bit of a nod to the inspiration of the whole story. But knowing that I wanted to put Rebecca in an asylum because of her craziness and almost throwing her grandchild off the lighthouse, she had to go to an asylum. And I was like, ugh, I don't want to drag her all the way across the water again to the mainland. So I felt like there had to be somewhere closer. And so I decided to create that little place behind the hospital that they refurbished and created an asylum for themselves.
Yeah.
Just so it's more it's more central to the island itself instead of going across to the mainland all the time.
Yeah, to keep it like local.
To keep it local, right?
Yeah. Talk to me about Baxter Murphy here. He
is a bastard.
Yeah.
Baxter the bastard, and he is constantly trying to find dirt on his employers. I mean, he's just like Jacob. He will bite the hand that feeds him any day he wants, but he is super, super intent on finding some kind of dirt, some kind of shocking revelation that they can pin on the family, because so far everything that's happened, they've been able to lie about. The lords have been able to get out from under and say that, so and so didn't do this, or Sebastian never died, he was kidnapped and he came back. All the secrets that are real are being hidden because the Lord family controls the media in that little area. They own all the newspapers, they own a lot of power. With a lot of power comes that kind of ability to control the narrative around all the terrible things you do. So Baxter, who knows that this family has some kind of weird shit going on, is doing everything he can to find it. And so he figures out a way to get his sister to work for the family. The Mrs. Johnson, if you will. She's not the cleaning lady, but she does infiltrate the family through a Mrs. Johnson kind of thing. So Baxter would be what? Baxter would be Burke trying to get dirt on the family, and she's his kind of like mole.
Well, here's I have a little theory that this is my theory. I think Lear Lockwood, who I want to talk to you about too, because he's an interesting attorney. He's not just a family attorney. He's related to the
he's family.
Yeah, he's family to the Lords because he's nephew to Rebecca. So I was thinking
some conflict of interest, but yes.
yeah, for sure. He actually recommended the girl, which is Baxter's sister. So I find that really suspicious, my friend.
We'll see. We will see what happens.
So, I'm an instigating little fucker. So I find that very suspicious. This is me. I do find the character interesting because Rebecca wasn't really too happy with Lear Lockwood. It
Not
was
at all.
so there's definitely a lot of characters with knives in their hand and ready to stab each other. Not literally, but
Or
metaphorically.
sometimes literally, sometimes literally.
So yeah, sometimes literally. So you got a lot going on here with this story, like you did with Return of Dark Shadows, which I do gotta congratulate you because you did Return of Dark Shadows really well, but now you have another story that you have cemented really well here.
I'm very proud of this. I love doing Return of Dark Shadows. It was the almost 5 years I had writing because it was like doing a story like this, like or like these two. As you know, you've done your own that are amazing. But it doesn't. Don't you find that it's so much more fun to write because you can write outside the box. You can create a story that has these weird situations that happen, but in a way it works because it is in the story. Like a werewolf wouldn't just work in any kind of story. Like it works because it is a gothic type of story. I keep saying story, but yeah, it's a gothic story. It's a horror story. I wouldn't say mine are too much horror. It's not a slasher type of horror, but it is creepy and it is kind of spooky, and there are these different wild crazy things that happen that wouldn't work anywhere else, and I find that fun. I get to write these amazing people who um, don't live the lives that regular people live and sort of feel like it's normal to them. It's very normal for them to see a witch, or it's very normal to them to have to go to an insane asylum every couple of months. You know, that's kind of a fun world to work in.
Yeah, it's really enjoyable to read. I mean that it really is fun to. It's a fun story to read.
Thank you so much.
Speaking as a reader, it's really fun. It's a fun world. It's not just Return of Dark Shadows, but To Be Night and Beguile. I've been reading this. This is really good. The to me, I'll give you my favorite character to read, and it's a lot of fun. Is my favorite character is Evie. I really enjoy the hell out of her.
Oh,
Um,
good. Yeah.
she's been to me like because you did a very. This isn't just Victoria Winters. This is somebody completely different.
She's definitely been through a lot. She is somebody who is pretty damn like determined. You know, she is
Yeah.
determined to have a good life. She came from wealth. Her family fell on really hard times. They figured out the only way that they could sort of survive as a family was to, you know, go ahead and play into that whole married thing where she had to be married off to a rich family so that they can help her family. And it's, you know, it's archaic, it's something super old, and would it makes sense in the time frame that it, you know, it's 19 by now, it's what, 1914 in that
Mhm.
story, in the story. So it makes sense in that kind of world. It wouldn't now, but it does. And so she's just determined, and she's going to fight for everything she has to make sure that she lives the life that she's supposed to live, and she's going to fight for it. And even though she's had such bad luck with the men in her life, her father died, her first husband had a really horrible you know, introduction to her, and her boyfriend that she was engaged to died, maybe. But there's a lot of different things that's happened to her, and she is still determined, and she's still gonna fight. And now she has a baby, and she now has a new focus to that passion of making sure that she gives her son a good life too. And she's gonna burn every bridge and fight every war to make sure that that happens.
Speaking of war, is the Lord family going to get into World War One?
Um, No, I think I'm gonna go the Dark Shadows route. You know how
Okay.
they never had holidays, they never had that type of thing. I think it would sort of take the magic out of the story if we
Okay.
did do real world stuff in there. Like that would be kind of heavy. But um, no, yeah, I don't think I will. I think I'm gonna stick to just keeping the story as where it is, and you know, in the supernatural kind of realm of things.
Right. No, I just figured I'd ask.
No,
you're,
yeah,
you're,
totally.
you're within that year frame, so that's
Yeah, yeah. It's what, 4 years away, right? 1918, or is that, or am I
no. You're
wrong?
1914 is when World War One started, so that's why.
I thought it was.
So,
I think it got it. Okay, I'm 4 years behind in my brain.
so, so that's why I asked.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think it would be kind of a little too much to delve into real life drama. I think going the spooky scary is funner for me, at least, you know.
Right. Um, I do I do find it interesting that you have a lot of supernatural wars going on in your story too. That's another
That's
thing.
World War One, sure.
Yeah, that's a whole other
That's a whole.
yeah, that's a whole other thing too, because you got I don't think we've heard the last of the devil in my theory. Am I
I think
wrong?
you're going the right road because Caspian is definitely going to figure some stuff out. There's going to be
Yeah.
some really big surprises in his life.
Yeah. I have no doubt. That's that Caspian is an interesting. I will say that he's an interesting. You got a lot of interesting characters, and every one of them has. I like that you've literally created a whole nother gothic world here. So
Thank you so much. I mean, that is a very huge compliment. I was hoping that it would kind of land in a good place, and I'm glad that people, at least you, are enjoying it.
well, I think you have a lot of people enjoying it, not just me.
I hope
Uh,
so. I mean, I would love. I mean, I'm so glad every time I get to hear your thoughts and your ideas and your predictions. It's literally one of the most rewarding parts of it because as you're right, you want to hear if your story is landing right, if people are understanding it and thinking like, damn, I gotta get back in, I can't wait to read the next one. Doesn't it make you feel like you're doing something right when you do it?
yeah, pretty much. I mean, that's the
Yeah,
thing.
it's a good feeling and it makes it feel like it's sort of worth it, all that work and all of the preparation and all of the creating of the, for me at least, the outlines and the pictures that I'd create and all of that stuff takes a lot of time. So when you come with your read-alongs and your predictions, it's like the best feeling because then I know that it's worth it.
Yeah, it's an amazing story though. So I'm trying to think if there's anything I want to ask you more about. Is there anything you want to add?
I mean, just thank you so much for reading, thank you for doing your videos, I really appreciate it. Yeah.
I mean, about your story.
Oh, my story? Oh, I gosh, there's so much more to come. There's a whole other trying to make book 6 probably the longest of them all.
Yeah,
I'm trying to push myself and see if I can maybe instead of, I think this one was 16 chapters. I want to see if I can do maybe 18 and
yeah,
then just kind of like, I don't know, make the chapters shorter, but each one shorter so that they're easier to read and get through, and then maybe extend it a little further out so that way it can kind of balance out. But I'm a very wordy person. I write a lot of words, so I don't know if I'll be able to do that. We'll see. But book
yeah.
6, I don't know. I don't know yet when it's coming out. Hopefully by the summer.
I wouldn't put it past you because you write really good. So link to well before we get no, I don't have no more questions. Um, link to Benight and Beguile will be in the description box. Not just the most recent chapter, but a lot of the other chapters too. Really good. It has been everything has been really good because the from the scene settings. What what inspires you to like set the perfect scene? Is it just in your head or?
Honestly, it's like usually the season. So I wrote this in the winter, like the end of fall, winter. So that's why this book was all set in the winter. And
Yeah,
so I usually try to, if I look out my window, what's outside? What does it look like outside? And then I try to imagine it in what would Wellsport look like in that time period, in that same kind of, season. So it was like early fall, beginning of winter, maybe when I started writing all this stuff. So that's kind of where I set it.
yeah, it's really good. Really great scene setting you did. But link to Benight and Beguile will definitely be in the description box, guys. Go check it out if you haven't already. Is there anything you want to add before we go?
Nothing. Thank you so much again for everything. I appreciate everything.
Don't hang up on me. I want to ask you some questions, not about To Be Night and Beguile.
Okay.
but honestly, thank you there for letting me interview you because it means a lot to get to talk to you about this story.
Anytime. It's been way too long. We should have done this a while ago, and it's kind of my fault.
No, people's lives get busy. So, all right, hold on here.